Varun, let me know when you've gone live.
Yeah, I've started.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Let me begin by introducing myself. I'm Ashwin Lobo, a research associate at Environment Support Group, and I'm happy to welcome all of you to the seventh webinar of our series, Bangalore's Climate Action Plan, making it participatory and inclusive. This series was conceptualized based on the BBMP agreement to take action under the Paris Climate Agreement. In each session, we invite leading administrators, experts, and representatives from impacted communities to introspect on what the city's climate plan must contain so that the challenges of decarbonization are met in a just and equitable manner. Following the inaugural session on March 22nd, each weekly session looks at sectoral issues so that a collective action plan can be evolved for making Bangalore climate friendly. Last week's session was on making Bangalore energy independent. It witnessed extensive discussion on energy usage in the city, interrogated how steps can be taken towards decentralized energy production, and explored how we can transition away from fossil fuels. Most importantly, it questioned why we need so much energy at all. In today's session, we'll deal with the topic of securing clean air and inclusive mobility for Bangalore. I want to start with a very alarming statistic. Last year alone, Bangalore City added 12 lakh vehicles over the span of 12 months. This is nearly double the amount it has added in previous years. This means that the city now has close to 85 lakh private vehicles, a shockingly high number for a population of just 13 million people. And we all know what the result of that is. The streets are just full of traffic, air quality is constantly deteriorating. In fact, air pollution levels in the city are nearly 3 times above WHO prescribed limits. And this has resulted in spikes in asthma, chronic bronchitis, and a whole range of other respiratory illnesses, especially in children. And this is particularly worrying at the time when we're all in the midst of a global pandemic, which is mainly affecting people's lungs. It also makes me wonder, could the dense, toxic winter smog, which has become typical of Delhi and other cities of the north, could that soon be a reality for Bangalore too? Despite these worrying implications for health, mobility is a basic need in the city. All of us need to commute to school, to college, to work, and to visit our friends and family. You begin to think, how can we move through the city in a way in which results in minimal pollution while simultaneously reducing traffic congestion? And how can this form of mobility be designed such that it includes those who cannot afford the destructive luxury of private vehicles? Like every city in India, Bangalore too is characterized by socio-economic, health, and environmental disparities. There are neighborhoods where upper classes live, which are plush with infrastructure, good bus and metro connectivity, plenty of schools, hospitals, open spaces, and recreation facilities. And then there are those neighborhoods where massive populations of poor and working classes live, where transport and social facilities are almost non existent, and health and education infrastructure rarely affordable and accessible. In such a complex landscape that Bangalore now constitutes, working, trading, and student populations must travel great distances across the city every day. This compels many to self drive in order to cut travel time. The commute of today has a very devastating impact on health and livelihoods, particularly of the poor who do not have the means to buy their way out of this inconvenience. So, what's brought us here? I think the role, or rather the lack of urban planning, is indicative of the city's current predicament. Most policymakers' imagination seems to be restricted to widening roads and building flyovers and elevated corridors, thinking that these infrastructures will relieve traffic congestion and make life easier. But world over, Things like this have failed to produce desired results, and instead they've turned cities into a tangled mess of concrete and steel, filled with traffic and producing toxic air and poor health for all. As a part of a vicious circle, such projects simply end up promoting more aggressive use of private vehicles and provide less and less safe space for those who wish to walk or cycle. Tragically, massive mobility infrastructure also just destroys urban ecology. The proposed peripheral ring road alone is just one such example, and unless it's stopped, it's going to take the lives of 33,000 trees. One shudders to imagine how many lakhs of trees have fallen victim to other road widening and construction projects across the city. Is this something we can really afford, cutting down the very trees that are working tirelessly to make Bangalore's air somewhat breathable and its climate more pleasant? This is keeping in mind that tree-lined streets would also encourage more carbon-neutral transport in the form of walking and cycling, and also provide much needed shade to support fragile livelihoods of street vendors. The future of mobility in Bangalore definitely needs careful, systematic, and compassionate planning. Through today's discussion, our speakers will shed light on how the city can not just become carbon neutral to fulfill the targets of the Paris Climate Agreement, but also be a real joy to live in and move through. Before we go further, I just like to go over a few housekeeping rules. Everyone is requested to keep their phones on silent, and all are requested to stay on mute, except for the speakers, of course. Each of the speakers will be making a brief intervention of about 10 to 12 minutes. And once all the speakers are done, we'll be taking questions from the audience. All of you are welcome to leave your questions in the chat box, as in when you come up with one. So with that, I'll hand the floor over to Leo first. I think he wants to share something.
Yeah, I also greet you all. These are very, very disturbing times. As I speak, we're all in ESG, hoping that Dr. Shirdi Prasad Thakur will battle COVID and come out. He's in hospital now. He's a trustee, he's a community health physician, he's a trustee of ESG, he's a community health physician. He served the Indian Army as a doctor for several years. And he's been one of the finest epidemiologists and community health specialists we have had in this region, and inspired so many to take up public health. And over the last 1 year, he has saved hundreds of people in his clinic, and he's one of those doctors who is like the character that you read of in The Citadel by A.J. Cronin. So Shirdi Prasad Thakur to us is that kind of a doctor. So please, on our behalf, we request you to wish him well. So he fights his fight and comes out victorious against this nasty disease, and we are hoping for the best. That said, I also want to remember, because we lost day before yesterday, S.G. Neginal. He was one of the finest foresters. At the age of 92, he was still enthusiastic. He was writing books. He has written several books, and that is all post-retirement. But during the term that he was a forester, he is one of those principally responsible for creating the Bandipur Tiger Reserve. But more importantly, he's a man who understood forests, and for him, forests were not just trees. It was the wild spaces. He argued with the department throughout his life to protect grassland ecosystems as much as he argued against those who were promoting eucalyptus and acacia plantations as if they were forests inside the Western Ghats also. For me, Neginal is one of those who, when I was a student, I met him asking whether, I don't know who he was at that time. We were fearful of entering his office because, students going in, nobody takes us seriously. But Neginal turned my life. He said, what are you doing here sitting? Take these saplings. And he made us plant hundreds of saplings. Now they're 35 years old and they're all full grown trees. If you go to Banshankari third stage, you can see them all. But he inspired hundreds of people like me, and it was very, very sad that we had to lose him to COVID because he was a tough man. And even then, for 10 days, he argued with COVID, but eventually that damn thing took him. I believe Varun has a small memoriam, sort of an interview with him. We just thought we'd use this occasion to remember him. Yes, Varun, please.
Here in 1982, special to green the Bangalore city as per the directions of the Chief Minister Gundu Rao then. Those times, the trees were not at all so prominently engraved in the minds of the people. People used to come and just do Vanamosva and get away after the function. But the people had no idea what value the trees were adding to the city. So, when Gandura said that the city should be made green within the shortest time, the government brought me here to green it. I came here in 1982 and was here till 1987. 5 years I was here. Then, when I landed at Bangalore, I saw the city was not very much destroyed, although it was not of the earlier natural state of affairs. New buildings were coming up, and roads were being widened, and trees being cut also, and so many of the bunch of the greenery all had already disappeared. I landed here at the right time, I should say. If I were to land here later in 1990 or so, I couldn't have done the work which I did between 80 to 87. Because those times I had to prepare the mind of the public also. Of course, Bangaloreans are very tree lovers. They wanted trees here, but there was nobody to guide them. In such things, what happens is we need good leadership. If the leadership is properly given to the public, I thought unless the public is involved, the scheme project will not be successful because the public should take interest because all 24 hours we can't be and my lifter staff can't be standing below all the saplings to guard them and all that. So it was necessary to have the public also involved in this great project. For that, I contacted all the citizens of the city and requested them, see here, I'm going to make your street green by planting trees. So tomorrow morning I'm coming here with my staff and plants and everything ready, and the pits will be kept ready also. You people have to, what to do is you have to just come and plant some saplings so that one by one you can, and then because your involvement in that planting will make you interested in protecting the trees also. That's how I made this project very successful. Second thing what I did is I appointed tree wardens so that they can take care of the plants and throughout the city also. I had planted about 350 tree wardens, and we used to have every month we have having a monthly meetings at the Aranya Bhavan conference hall where we are having feedback. I wanted to know what they had done, and I wanted to tell them what we are doing also. So it was a very the communication. The tree wardens were the communicators between the public and me also. Then some of them just told me, sir, what is happening is to get we are interested in planting saplings in our courtyards or behind our the houses also. But plants are so far off, available only at Aranyaban. We cannot come to your Aranyaban to pick up the saplings because distance will be more and all that. I said, all right, I will open tree banks everywhere throughout the city. You will have tree banks when at Korabangala and Indranagar and Vijayanagar, Mahalakshmipuram, everywhere. I opened the tree banks so that the people, the public can go on their holidays like Sundays and pick up saplings of their choice, anything like that. I used to, that's how I made it popular. Then I know the school students, it was very important. because unless the younger generation interested in a tree conservation planting, it will not be successful. So I used to visit all the colleges, schools also, request the headmasters to participate in tree planting also. So that's how I made it successful. And many people used to say, sir, we want to, because of the interest shown by me, and it caught up through the news media, and everyone wanted to plant it. So they said, sir, we are going to plant at Indranagara. So we wanted some saplings. So we can't come to Aranyaban and take it. I said, don't worry, I'll send it on my own. So I sent lorry loads of saplings to them so that I can plant there. And it was very helpful for them also. Without taking any transport cost, anything of that sort, we used to supply to them so that they can go and plant at their functions. Then
Yeah, thank you, Varun. That was part of a 19-minute interview. You can find it on our YouTube channel, ESG India. You can also find it on our Facebook or on our website soon. And he goes on to explain other aspects of his work. So we dedicate this session to the memory of really one of the most affable, and there's hundreds of people who are writing, and you know how many people he has touched. The enthusiasm this man had. About 7 years ago, he was with Seshadri on a motorbike or a car or whatever means of transport, going and selecting ficus trees and making sure they get protected. He was already 85 that time. Now, we won't find such foresters so easily, and let's continue in memory of Meginal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leo, for sharing that. It was really heartwarming to hear from Mr. Neginhal, and I can only hope that Bangalore produces many more such people who are so enthusiastic about protecting and planting trees. So with that, I'd like to now introduce our first speaker for today, Professor Ashish Verma. Professor Ashish Verma is the convener of the IISc Sustainable Transportation Lab. He has a PhD from IIT Bombay and is currently serving as Associate Professor of Transportation Systems Engineering at the Department of Civil Engineering, Center for Infrastructure Sustainable Transportation and Urban Planning at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He has authored more than 195 research publications in the area of sustainable transportation and road safety. He's also authored a book on public transport planning and management in developing countries, along with Professor T.V. Ramanaya. So with that, I'd like to invite Professor Ashish to begin.
Thanks, Ashwin. Hope I am audible.
Yeah, you are.
Thanks to Leo also for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts on the topic of the day, which is on climate action related to mobility and space. Of course, you know, as Leo pointed out, and you know, the short memorial we had, these are tragic and difficult times. I hope everybody who is battling with this overcomes it successfully. And let's pray, all of us pray for the well wishes of everybody. With that, let me just quickly share my screen and share I have a short presentation. Is it visible, the title slide?
Yeah, it's visible.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would, let me just minimize this. Yeah. So I'll touch upon the aspect of how climate change mitigation and adaptation potential of sustainable urban transport measures can be evaluated, mainly based on our experience with some of the research work that we have done as part of a major collaborative exercise called Climatrans. Without wasting time, let me go further. While thinking about the climate action plan and how we see the future of sustainable urban mobility in our city going ahead, of course, it's important to keep focus and, a memory afresh about what was the pre-COVID mobility in our cities with, consistent growth of congestion. As in the memorial video also, we were seeing that, cutting of trees, expansion of roads, flyovers, underpasses, elevated corridors, etc., have brought us nowhere but more and more congestion. Growing environmental problems, in the degrading air quality, increase in noise pollution, climate change impact, growing fuel consumption, and overall impact of all this in terms of negative health impact. So this mask that you see on the face is in the pre-COVID era of people wearing pollution mask and not the COVID mask that we see with everyone today. Let me just choose a pointer. Sorry. Yeah. And overall degradation and the livability of cities. So without wasting too much of time on looking at statistics and so on, what we really need is a systems approach, which is more of a which is a good combination of top-down and bottom-up approach, rather than this traditional engineering approach of bottom-up, which essentially looks at the hotspots or congestion points and then try to think about solutions, which we end up doing, either road widening or creating a flyover on those congestion points and so on. Eventually, transportation planning should no more be just about removing these congestion points and reducing the volume to capacity ratio, which has been the benchmark, parameter of transport planning, but should also be about reducing the total vehicle kilometers traveled by motorized modes, and thereby you would reduce our dependence on fossil fuel, you will reduce your tailpipe emissions and carbon emissions. So that's what is the shift that we need in our approach. Eventually, it should lead to a more livable city, more livable Bangalore. So quality of life and livability should be the main goal of any development that we see or do in the future in Bangalore, and we should have a clarity of how we should evaluate any interventions in terms of livability and quality of life. So going further in terms of...
Can I just intervene? You have to speak a little louder because some people cannot hear you. You come closer to the mic.
Yeah. So going further in the post-COVID world, if we have to look about a sustainable urban mobility future, what we really need is not just a silver bullet. I mean, there's no silver bullet when you look at the sustainable urban mobility. Essentially, we need a bundle of strategies, and this is an example. I'll go further into details of how we have arrived at this bundle and how we have evaluated, but it's essentially have to be a combination of measures, including planning aspects like increasing the network coverage of public transport, walking and cycling infrastructure, but also look at regulatory and economic instruments like car restricted roads, congestion pricing, park and ride at public transport terminals, in the outskirt locations, encouraging the bus lanes and high occupancy lanes, and as much as possible a shared mobility and mixed density, land use, so that you reduce distances for travel, along with, of course, technology measures like all buses and cars running on electricity. And what we have to top up these policies is the policies that we have learned during pandemic, especially in terms of work from home, flexible work hours, and so on, how that can help in reducing the demand. So if I lay down, 9 core principles on which we should think about a low carbon and sustainable mobility scenario, one should be to reduce the need for travel. And again, policies like work from home that we have seen should be adopted on long term as a very conscious policy to reduce the need for travel, study from home. These things cannot happen continuously and with all sectors, but wherever we can. Reducing the distance for travel, that's where this whole concept of mixed land use policy and planning comes. How people can live and work closer, or live and where they go for education, so that using sustainable modes is easier. Ensure equal access to all. Equity should be central to all development that we do in the city. Infuse more infrastructure for sustainable modes rather than road widening and elevated corridor and such stuff, which only prioritize the movement of personal mobility vehicles, leading to more congestion as well as emissions. Assign correct priority of movement in right-of-way allocation. You should have a clarity of how right-of-way should be looked at and should be assigned to different road users, and ensure seamless, contactless, and safe travel experience with sustainable modes. That's how they'll become attractive. And also incentivize its higher usage. Discourage all types of high polluting and high space occupying vehicles per unit of person carried. If you are carrying occupying more space to carry one person, that's not the mode that we should be promoting. And promoting cleaner vehicle technology and fuel for all vehicles, and improve disaster resiliency of transport system. So these 9 core principles, I would say, are what we should look at the way forward. And no more fancy flyovers and elevated corridors. It's a pity if you don't even learn from our pandemic. So when you look at the climate change and how we mitigate, I mean, there are 2 action points. One is mitigation, where the effort is to reduce or prevent greenhouse gas emissions, but also we have to be ready with any consequences, negative consequences or adverse effect of climate change, which has already occurred, in terms of improving resiliency of transport system and adopting it. In our research, we took urban flooding as an important case, which is also a issue with Bangalore often. With heavy rainfall, we often see whole life paralyzing. So how to make the infrastructure and transportation system more resilient to urban flooding? So overall, what we have tried doing is, develop these climate change mitigation and adaptation plans from transport sector, urban transport sector, taking the case of Bengaluru. And these are the objectives. In the interest of the time, I'll not go into details, but some of them I'll not be able to present. Like, for example, we have also looked at how different income and gender groups are impacted with the mitigation burden. But I'll not be able to show all those results here today. This is the overall framework where we look at both the mitigation and adaptation. And in terms of mitigation, we are not just focusing on how much emissions we can reduce from tailpipe, including carbon, but also the carbon emission intensity, to understand how our Paris INDCs can be achieved from urban transport, but even looking at economic benefits of different mode users in terms of consumer surplus, and looking at income and gender wise burden of mitigation. Likewise, on the adaptation framework, we look at urban flooding as a case, and we develop some kind of composite measure to see how adaptability of the transport infrastructure and system can be measured and improved in terms of the resiliency. Let me quickly move forward. So, the theme of this whole session is also to see how this climate action can be done in a more democratic way. So, this is one example where we have tried developing these sustainable transport scenarios on a strong basis of stakeholder consultation using a Delphi approach at different stages of the study, and develop these bundles to evaluate as sustainable transport bundles against a business as usual scenario using all these indicators that I'm talking about. I'll quickly take you through the result to just show you. In a business as usual, if you do nothing and just forecast things in the future for 2030 and 2050, you are essentially seeing a situation where vehicle kilometers traveled could increase by 50% in 2030 and more than 100% in 2050. And if you translate this into the emissions, carbon emissions are the ones which are substantially going to increase. And there are several factors which may be contributing to it. One is, of course, the increased vehicle kilometer travel, but also the emission factors, since even when there is a shift to metro and, electrification of buses may happen, but since the electricity generation is predominantly on coal, you see a substantial carbon emission. So how do you mitigate it? So we came up with these bundles of policies based on this, stakeholder consultation in a Delphi method, and then evaluated each of these bundles in terms of its mitigation potential. So it's just an example of how each one of these policies that we are talking about here were demonstrated for the case of Bengaluru. Looking at here, if you look at this bundle 3, where all these measures have been implemented together for the case of Bengaluru, what we see is a good increase in the mode share of walk, cycle, bus, and metro, and a decrease in the share of car, two-wheeler, and auto. Please keep in mind that none of these measures talks about increasing the road number of, the amount of or the length of roads or widening of roads anywhere. So this is without any road infrastructure based measure. In 2050, we are literally getting the mode share of the sustainable modes to 75% and above. When we look at the vehicle kilometers traveled, we are able to bring down in 2030 and 2050 almost by 18 to 16% the vehicle kilometers traveled, which means that there's also a savings in the fuel consumption and the tailpipe emissions. And if we convert this into emissions, for the best case scenario, where we are implementing this bundle 4, where also all cars and buses are running on electricity, and if we have 100% generation of electricity from renewable sources, you can get a mitigation potential of carbon to almost 80% 2030 and 94% from the business, comparing with the business as usual, 94% in 2050, and even PM 2.5 from 60% to 72%. Even within the renewable sources, if you remove bioenergy and focus only on 100% clean sources like hydropower, solar, etc., your mitigation potential can further increase for each of these pollutants. Do I have a couple of minutes, Ashwin? If I can just finish this part as
well.
Yeah,
if you can just wrap up in a minute or two.
Yeah. We also then looked at the adaptation part, taking urban flooding as a case. Essentially, the whole idea is taking the flood maps of Bengaluru for a given rainfall event. We have tried assessing the vulnerability of the transportation network to the flooding levels, and then develop various adaptation policies based on certain parameters that would showcase the resiliency of transport system. So we took this event of 266 mm rainfall occurred in 2015 as an extreme rainfall case, and came up with the vulnerability assessment of each and every link in the transport network of Bengaluru to understand what is the flood level on each and every link and the sections of the link. That helps us do the vulnerability analysis. And when we look at a situation of business as usual going in future, we see that if a flooding occurs, this is the increase in the vehicle kilometers traveled in 2030 and 2050, and even the vehicle hours traveled. So essentially, with the flooding situation, you are traveling more, and also you are spending more time in travel. So we again looked at, through a Delphi approach, a bundle of strategies to make or improve the resiliency. For example, replacing impermeable road surface with permeable materials, slum relocation and rehabilitation, providing proper drainage at vulnerable areas, and so on and so forth. And when we evaluated them, we could achieve, for example, quite a substantial improvement in the vehicle kilometers traveled. That means reduction from a flooding situation, and likewise how many trips are cancelled and so on. So it actually showcases how we can also improve the resiliency of the transportation system. So I think with that, I stop. The only thing I would like to say is all this is not possible unless we have integration among agencies. With fragmented responsibilities in Bengaluru, we can't really achieve these mitigation and adaptation plans. Thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Professor Verma, for that insightful research. And I think the point you mentioned at the end was the most important, probably, that we need integration from the different agencies who are in charge of mobility in the city. And yeah, that's really essential. So with that, I would invite Mr. Mahesh Kashyap. I will just introduce him briefly. Also, I would like to encourage members of the audience to leave your questions in the chat box for our speakers. So I'll introduce Mr. Mahesh Kashyap now. Mr. Kashyap is a consultant and has worked with a number of government and private organizations in Bangalore. He worked as a visiting scientist in the Indian Institute of Science and as a consultant with the Ministry of Environment and Forests. His expertise is in air and noise pollution issues, climate change, teaching and training, health risk assessment, and outreach activities. He was formerly a senior engineer with the Department of Environment, Government of Canada. Prior to that, he was associated with various levels of consulting services in the US, advising clients on environmental issues. So, Mr. Kashyap, would you like to begin?
Thank you very much, Ashwin. So am I audible properly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you.
Your voice is
First of
breaking up a
all,
little.
thanks to SG for giving me an opportunity to speak on the important issue. I'm going to just switch between, have some reference notes I need to go while I'm speaking. I don't have any presentation. If there's any audible issues, please let me know. See, we all know that air pollution and climate change issues are regulatory driven. Government and nodal agencies need to take steps to reduce air pollution and climate change. There is a need to make decisions at the right time at highest level through strong policies, as Professor Verma also mentioned in his presentation, because these come under policy issues. See, there are many studies that have been done regarding the impact of health on air pollution. We all know the issues. We know we live in the asthma capital of the country. It's also called sneezing and wheezing city. Looks like we are going around and around in circles because there's always some study going on. Not an issue. But when are we going to start mitigation? There is a recent report that up to 2 million children are exposed to air pollution in the city. As I said, we are going in circles, doing studies that are repetitive. The need of the hour is mitigation. What we need to do is to emphasize on pollution prevention and reduction issues, rather than doing some monitoring work here and there. There's no proper coordination. This is the biggest issue I want to emphasize. People are doing their own work. They're not sharing the information. They're not sharing the data. At least share with KSPCB or the CPCB, because there is absolutely no coordination among the people who are on the field, who are doing their work. Government agencies have come up with some pointers to reduce air pollution, but this has a long way to go. Some mitigation measures are superficial, I should say, such as building water fountains at the busy junctions. There's no explanation given how air pollution will be reduced in that area with this measure. These kind of measures should be avoided. We need to be as realistic as possible. The biggest issue is that there is lack of knowledge and expertise when it comes to air pollution and climate change issues. Most of the work done is by reading from the net or from some research papers. Bengaluru is more of a service-oriented city than an industrial city. This is good for the city with respect to...
Mr. Kashyap, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, your voice is slightly breaking up. The audio is not very clear.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, hold on, I just pull the laptop towards me.
Yeah.
We are more of a service-oriented city than an industrial city. This is good for the city with respect to air pollution and climate change. Some people do ask, is Bengaluru going towards Delhi? I don't think so. Because the weather is different. In the winter, Delhi has more winter as compared to us. During winter, what happens is that the winds will be very less. Stagnant. So the pollution stays there. We don't have that winter. If it goes to 14, 15 degree, we're all bundled up. To give an example, I lived in Ottawa. It's the second coldest capital in the world. -20 with wind chill, -30, -35. Well, once you are there, you are there. You have to live there. Anyway, so I don't think Bangalore will go Delhi way. And there are a lot of industries around Delhi. As I said, we are more service oriented. Main sources of pollution in the city are mainly from vehicles, construction activities, road dust, and DJ sets. As I understand, there are already the number of vehicles registered has crossed 9 million. Not all would be on the road. More than 1,000 vehicles are registered every day, of course, barring the Corona season right now. There are tens of thousands of old vehicles on the road, such as PTs, trucks, buses, etc. We observe, you can see the dark smoke coming out of the tailpipes. I'll give you a small exercise. Next time when you are on the road, when you're not driving, of course, observe the tailpipes of the TTs, the KSRTC buses, especially the one that are going outside Bangalore. It's in Kannada, it's called as Gramantarga Sarige. It's written on the bus, a red and yellow bus. Please observe the tailpipe emissions, the smoke coming out. Take a photo, make a video. And you can see how much pollution is there. You can say those are all Gramantarga Sarige, but they start from Majestic. By the time they reach the outskirts of Bangalore, it could be around 40 kilometers probably. Imagine how much smoke it has spewed to the atmosphere. Construction is going on everywhere because right now we are upgrading the infrastructure, whether it is metro rail, underground UGD, etc. Pollution is there at the spots. Fortunately, measures are not taken to reduce those dust. Maybe they can use recycled water to reduce dust pollution at those construction sites. Power outages are common in the city. If we can have uninterrupted supply of power, there's no need for DJ sets. Power can come from anywhere, hopefully by renewables such as solar, wind, and hydroelectric. There are a lot of sugar mills in the northern Karnataka where they produce power and they dump it on the grid. Government needs to tap those sugar mills. They can supply power. In fact, there is a saying, I read it somewhere, that the profit of sugar mills is more because of the power production than producing sugar. So from both the sides, they're making profit, which is good for the economy. But government needs to tap the power supplied or produced by the sugar mills. With respect to climate change, we need to start looking into mitigation, as right now the emphasis is given more on adaptation and resilience. Looks like we have already accepted that we can't do anything regarding climate change. This should not be the case or attitude. The nodal agency of the state need to take action to reduce greenhouse gases in the state and work towards mitigating climate change. Again, the issue is that there is lack of knowledge and expertise regarding greenhouse gas and climate change issues. Again, most of the work is done through reading from the book or from research papers. It will become more of an academic issue. Again, emphasize again, we need to be as realistic as possible. We have seen too many superficial issues that has not worked out. Second thing, another point I want to emphasize is we need to improve the planning. As you have seen what's going on in the COVID issues, there was lack of proper planning. As you might have heard, during the March first week itself, the health minister said we need to have a lockdown. There's complete lack of planning here. Probably people didn't understand. We need to think for the next 2 to 5 years how greenhouse gas would change the climate, what's going to happen. We need to start planning on these lines. Another point I want to emphasize, we want to improve the walking mode of transport with using good footpaths. Currently, the footpaths are nothing but drain covers. We all have seen it. If footpaths are good, public will be happy to use it. You must have heard the phrase, if you build, they will come. If you build good footpaths, people will come and use it. We need to ensure the footpaths are not taken over by hawkers. Whenever there's a good footpaths with a lot of interlocking and tiles, suddenly hawkers will come and sit. Well, footpaths are footpaths to be used by the people to walk, not for the people to market their stuff. I live in Malleshwaram. I see a lot of things on Samke Road. Most of the footpaths are used by hawkers. There's about anywhere between 2 to 4 feet of space to walk. Especially in the weekends, people are jostling with each other to use the space. Green belt concept. I really don't know if there is a green belt concept in the state or in the city, because you can go only so much. See, Bangalore is not like Mumbai or Chennai, where there's water on one side. We can expand in all 360 degrees. So the expansion is going on. And right now, there's more vertical growth going on. It's increasing the density of population and the use of vehicles, both private and public. See, Bangalore, there's a lot of economic issues. People are moving. There's a lot of jobs created here. That's the reason. We need to improve the urban planning. It's been an issue for a long time. It's been discussed so many times. I just want to quickly, before I finish, I want to emphasize on electric vehicles. It will be an answer to some extent in the long run. It takes time. Use of electric vehicles depends on several factors, such as infrastructure, supply of energy, etc. One cannot convert all vehicles into electric, as this would take away power supply to industries and residential units. Just overnight, within 1 or 2 months, you cannot have all vehicles electric. Just imagine taking away energy from industries and residential units. And also, we need to evaluate if the current CPCB standards need to be evaluated to see if it is yielding results. CNG is an alternate to diesel and petrol, because the only issue would be transportation and storage, because CNG is mainly methane. 93% of CNG is methane. If there is a leakage, it will affect the climate, because methane is 21 times more effective with respect to climate change than carbon dioxide.
Mr. Kashyap, if you don't mind, can you just wrap up in a minute or so?
Yes, I'm almost done. Unburned CNG from vehicles may escape to air. Now, cleaner fuels. Right now, we have the BS6. What's the difference between BS4 and BS6? BS6, the sulfur content is 10 ppm as compared to 50 ppm for BS4. We should reduce a lot of pollution. Unfortunately, this may not affect carbon dioxide. That needs to be evaluated. I'm glad that they included PM for BS6. There's no change in carbon monoxide standards. Someone was asking a couple of days back, can BS4 vehicles run on BS6 fuel? Absolutely, there's no doubt. As vice versa, they can run on the BS6 can run on BS4 also. So hope I have made my points clear. We need to be as realistic as possible to combat air pollution and climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kashyap. I think one very important thing you pointed out was that it's not just vehicles, but also the construction industry, which is another major source of pollution in our city. And also thank you for the many interesting solutions you proposed. I see some comments have come in the chat box. I think we can have an interesting discussion after this. I would also invite people who have any questions for Mr. Kashyap to leave them in the chat. Our next speaker for today will be Mr. Vinay Srinivasa. Vinay Srinivasa is a member of the Bengaluru Bus Prayanikara Vedike. This is a coalition of groups and unions in the city which are working to ensure that bus travel is affordable, inclusive, and easily accessible to all sections of society, especially the marginalized. Vinay's areas of interest include urban transport, urban poverty, the informal sector, and urban governance. He has also been part of initiatives promoting free and open source software in the government. Vinay is also a member of the Alternative Law Forum. Yeah, Vinay, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, ESG, for having me on the panel. Firstly, I have to apologize to everybody. I'm guilty of making this a manel. Shahini Shasa of Bengaluru Bus Prayanikara Vedike was supposed to be participating, but unfortunately, she's not feeling well. And so I stepped in, and now the panel has become a manel, something which we should all avoid. My apologies for the same. There are a number of things as far as climate change and Bangalore is concerned that need to be addressed. Professor Ashish Verma, good to see you again, Professor Verma, has outlined a number of strategies, including changes in urban planning and the kind of urban form that we need to have. But I'd like to start by saying that before we talk of the actual strategies, we need to have a change in the perspective with which we're looking at climate change and with which we're looking at cities itself. The most important thing to remember is that our cities need to be seen from the perspective of justice first. If you look at cities today, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wanted us to move away from villages and move into cities, because of the kind of deep casteism that was there in villages and the kind of harassment and discrimination that was going on in villages. And, people started migrating to cities, and now cities, there are a lot of things that cities offer to you. Cities offer choice, cities offer you anonymity, cities might offer you places which are less hostile. But also cities have increasingly become spaces of inequality, right? So in Bangalore, you might have two people living in, say, a 4,000 square feet house, and you'll have at the same time, you'll have 8 people living in a shed, which is 6 by 8. This is just one example of the kind of inequality that is there, right? And you have a person traveling in like a really expensive SUV, and there are thousands and thousands of these SUVs, and there are people who cannot even afford a BMTC bus. There are many domestic workers, for example, who walk. The reason I'm mentioning all this is all of these are inherently tied to climate change, right? And we must not be talking of climate change here, but we must be talking of climate justice. The first point I'd like to make is that unless we look at this from the frame of justice, unless we look at it from that perspective, we'll not be able to come up with good strategies. And this is really important. The second thing is Bangalore I'd like to talk of Bangalore not only as being affected by climate change, which it will be, but also Bangalore affecting climate change for the entire regions around Bangalore where we are situated. So I think it's important to speak of both, right? Now, as we all know, climate change affects the most marginalized first, and they're the ones who bear the brunt of it. And just to give you an example of the kind of impacts of climate change, or even in general of pollution, as Das has pointed out in the chat window, Bangalore has only around 6,500 buses. We have lakhs of private vehicles. So the people who travel in the bus are the ones who contribute least to climate change, because there are a number of people who go by bus. there were 38 lakh trips being made in bus before COVID. Ashwin, you're able to hear me well, right?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Perfect.
Yeah. So there were 38 lakh trips being made in BMTC before COVID, right? So 38 lakh people in just 6,500 buses. And then we have like around 40 lakh two-wheelers and around 15 lakh cars or so on the streets of Bangalore. So the person who pollutes the most is the person traveling alone in a car, but this person has an air-conditioned car. This person is not affected by the pollution. This person is causing the pollution but is least affected. Whereas the people in the bus, people who are pedestrians, cause the least pollution, but they're the most affected. Right? The people in the bus are the ones who cause the least amount of traffic congestion, but they're the ones who are most affected. But unfortunately, when we're looking at urban planning, when we're looking at urban design, when we're looking at transport planning, this is not at all a point that we take into consideration. This point about equity is not something that we take into consideration at all. If we took this point into consideration, we'd be encouraging more people to take the bus. We'd be increasing the number of buses. We'd be diversifying the kind of buses that we have in terms of size, and we'd make sure that the number of private vehicles are lesser. We'd ensure that the pedestrians get the best facilities that are there and not car goers. Unfortunately, our entire transport scenario is aimed at promoting private vehicles or even at promoting something like the metro. Many of you might argue that the metro is environmentally sustainable and it reduces pollution. It might reduce pollution in the city, but obviously, like Professor Ashish Verma also said, it depends on electricity, and a lot of electricity is generated by coal, and it's causing pollution elsewhere. Besides which, even if you and some might argue that you're looking at the short term, but you have to look at the long term. Interestingly, Professor Dinesh and others had made a study. This was for a central government institution. I forget the name. I'm sorry. I was drafted into this call today, so I couldn't fully prepare. But there is a study about the life cycle impacts of metro in terms of pollution and in terms of pollution versus a BRT. And Professor Dinesh Mohan and others, their study shows that even in terms of the kind of even if you look at the whole life cycle, metro is not at all worth it in terms of pollution, right? It's a bus rapid transit system which moves ahead. I just saw a comment saying that we all know about climate change. It's time we discuss solutions. I agree. I'm just saying that the solutions need to be seen at from a frame of justice. So seen from a frame of justice, for example, in Bangalore, instead of spending money in the peripheral ring road, or instead of spending money on, like, say, phase 3 of the metro, we need to be buying more buses. The question we must ask is, why are there only 6,500 buses? In the last 5 years, the number of buses on the road has come down. Over the last year, 1,000 buses have been decommissioned. Why is this happening? The moment you increase the number of buses, Bangalore needs at least around 10,000 to 12,000 buses. And there should be of different sizes, so many of them are able to cover the interior areas as well. The moment, for example, you just increase the number of buses, you'll see that the number of private vehicles will come down, pollution will come down, and the impact of Bangalore on climate change will come down, right? Including making Bangalore a cleaner place to live in, a cleaner place to breathe in. Plus, this ensures that there is greater access to accessible public transport to a large majority of the working class of the city. Secondly, in Bangalore, in terms of climate change, one of the biggest causes of climate change, I think Das was also mentioning earlier, alluding to some of this, right? Bangalore generates so much garbage, right? We don't seem to worry about how much we're ordering online, the kind of, the amount of packaging that comes and what we're consuming, right? You keep consuming more and more, and then you put it in Mavalipura, then you put it in Mandur, then you put it elsewhere. I'm sorry, you cannot look at climate change and look at climate justice without looking at consumption. We have to look who's consuming how much in this particular city. Like I said, there are people who might be 2 people who live in a 4,000 square foot apartment, and there might be 10 people living in a shed in a slum, right? So who's consuming more and who's contributing more? Are we going to start looking at it, right? How are you going to address the problem of consumption of climate change when you don't even know who's contributing how much, and you're unwilling to look at it from the frame of justice? So my proposition is, let us start looking at it from the frame of justice. Let us see who's consuming how much. Let us see what are the kind of solutions. First, let us gather the data in terms of what is contributing to climate change, what will mitigate climate change, and then go ahead. And if you see, look at it from the frame of justice, you'll see that the street vendors, the previous speaker was talking about street vendors. Actually, street vendors reduce climate change. If you buy a cucumber from a street vendor, you're buying it off the street. If you buy a cucumber in say Ample Mart or some such pot, Ample Mart or some such store. It's an air-conditioned store. It's a huge store. For one cucumber, there is so much infrastructure. So street vendors actually help you fight climate change. We must be looking at how to increase the number of street vendors in the city. If street vendors have caused pedestrians some problems somewhere, we need to use the town vending committees to come up with solutions which work well for everybody. My proposition is therefore, let us first look at the most marginalized in the city. Let us see how they've been impacted by climate change. Let us see how they have been impacted by the lopsided use of resources, the lopsided use of streets. Let us just take the streets of Bangalore. Let's make the streets more just first. The first thing to make streets just is reduce the number of private vehicles. Secondly, increase the number of buses. Third, widen the footpath. Bangalore is famous for road widening. I'd say that do road narrowing and footpath widening. Widen the footpaths and make it easier for pedestrians to walk. 4, increase the number of street vendors in the city. We should be buying more from street vendors and less from online vendors and less from air-conditioned markets and from malls, right? So once you start making the streets more just in terms of like providing more access to street vendors, buses and pedestrians, you'll see that that itself leads to a huge shift, right? And that is one of the first things we have to do in terms of climate change. In terms of transport, we have to make the bus the central node of the city. Buses is carrying more than metro or anything else. Metro after the pandemic is carrying just 1.5 lakh trips a day. And on phase 2 of the metro, when everybody is dying due to lack of oxygen now, there are 1,000 trees going to be cut for the airport metro line, and 14,000 crores are being spent on just one line of that metro. If a portion of that was spent on the bus, this would be a far better city. So let us look at it from the perspective of the most marginalized first. Let us look at investing in things which will make the city more just. Let us invest in the bus. Let us invest in pedestrian facilities. Let us make this a street vendor friendly city, and we'll see that automatically we'll start moving towards climate justice. Thank you, Ashwin.
Yeah, thank you, Vinay, for pointing out that equity and justice need to be a major point of consideration in planning for more sustainable mobility in Bangalore. I would like to invite our final speaker for today, Mr. Seshadri Ramaswamy. Mr. Seshadri has been practicing forestry, silviculture, and biodiversity enhancement over the last 2 decades in drylands and rainforests. His work is focused on practical forestry, applied research, and experimentation in forestry techniques. He has a deep expertise in the ecology of forestries of South India. And coincidentally, he was also trained under Mr. S.G. Neganhal in forestry, ecology study and practice. And he is much sought after as a field advisor to graduate and doctoral students of biodiversity. So, Mr. Seshadri, would you like to begin? Mr. Seshadri, are you there? Can you hear me? There seems to be some
We have a problem. He's in this field station in Hagumbe and Shimoga. It's possible that he has not been able to get good bandwidth. So what I would suggest is, since we have half an hour, Seshadri, can you come in or not? Your voice is breaking. So unless you have a good connection, it won't be possible for us to hear you. Shesh, we have to have a good connection. Otherwise, it won't be possible. So while he tries and finds a good connection, Ashwin, can I suggest we just have, I saw that,
You.
Shesh, we can't hear you.
I've just stopped the video.
Hmm.
Let's see if he's audible now. You all.
Okay, Shesh, it's not going to work like this. So may I suggest that you
After
can
a
type out
long time. So
I'll
I
just
have
call him up and tell him that it's not
uh,
working. Maybe you can continue, Leo.
Yeah, I think that's better. Uh, so I just want to say that in our forum today, we have Mr. Paritosh Tyagi, who is a former chairman of the Central Pollution Control Board. We have Dr. Nagendran, who served as member in the National Green Tribunal. I'm acknowledging that these two gentlemen have played, very critical roles in looking at this problem from regulatory and judicial perspectives. So could I suggest that we can actually invite them for interventions? I didn't ask them before, but I'm asking them now. Is it possible for you to make a couple of minutes of interventions, just broadly reflecting on what has been said and what you would feel that, I know that Dr. Nagendran, he taught me environmental science and guided me in a lot of ways. So he knows Bangalore, he's from here, but now lives in Chennai. But Mr. Tyagi has been across the world, across the country. So if you are there still, can you let us know if you will reflect on the presentations made and what you would think?
I don't think they can unmute themselves, so we need to make them a co-host. And
that Varun will take care. Sorry about this clunkiness with Zoom. Yeah, while that action is being taken, Das, if you're there, I noticed that you have written very deeply thought out questions. Would you like to reflect on them? Das is innovator, designer, but he has done a lot of incredible work in promoting non-motorized transport.
Yeah, I'm here.
Sure.
Let me just.
If you can turn on your video and talk.
I'll do that.
Just reflect on the presentation so that you can get feedback.
I'm just going to a place where there's more light. Okay.
Okay. No, it's okay. You can talk here, please.
Yeah.
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 I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had some, points to say about the various, some of the points that other speakers made. Of course, Vinay addressed some of them, but so we have this, overwhelming focus on electric vehicles. In fact, the BMTC is willing to spend 1 crore of rupees on one electric bus when, the normal bus, the diesel bus costs something like 20 lakhs, 5 times the amount for absolutely no reason. I mean, we just gone berserk with that. The normal BMTC bus actually takes, it consumes 2.5, I mean, it gives you 2.5 kilometers per liter of diesel, which essentially makes it something like, 30 times as efficient as a person in a car and about 15 times as efficient or 10 times as efficient as a person in a bike. So we just, getting into this thing of, trying to attain the ideal and forgetting about the good. Let's just look at good and go in steps. First, let's do the good. Let's just have more diesel buses. Like when I was saying, maybe 12,000, 20,000 more buses. We currently are just looking at number now. We have 6,023 buses, BMTC, which has been about the same from the past 10 years. You scrap, because of old age, you scrap 50 buses, you add 50 buses, actually increasing. So
this is one big solution. We just need to add the number of buses. And autos. Autos and buses have become okay, there's a problem. You don't allow autos in Cubbon Park, or you don't allow buses on some roads. First thing you do is take out autos and buses instead of the private automobiles. That's not, we've got literally, I think today it's about 90 lakh total number of automobiles, out of which autos are about 1.5 lakh or 2 lakhs. Buses 6,000, literally. I mean, it's 6,000 is a terrible number of buses to have for a city like this. So these are a couple of points that I wanted to, make.
I see now Dr. Nagendran is there. Would you like to reflect on the presentations?
Yeah, I mean, more than reflecting as such, I feel, one point which I think Mr. Vinay, he made that we should narrow the roads and widen the footpath. It is very ideal to talk like that, on paper. But in reality, you want to buy more buses. In fact, Mr. Dashalti said we should have 20,000 buses. When you add more number of buses, you need more road space. So there is some kind of a conflict, which is important, footpath or road. And this question has to be addressed. And then, unless he was also talking about one person going in SUV and then 100 people struggling for bus and then all these things. But unless we are able to bring about a mind change, right? There is no point talking about the different tiers in the society and the haves and have-nots and all kinds of things. All these things will make the speech attractive, but then we need solution. I'll give you one example. Mr. Dashalti was telling about 2.5 kilometers. In Chennai, I've seen 4 kilometer 1 liter size, right? For if a driver and conductor, they are made almost the owners of a particular bus for 2 months or 3 months. If they make it from 2.5 or 3 to 4, they are giving incentive. And that means the maintenance of the bus is important. And then how you use the routing. And now so many scientific software and modules are available. In fact, Dr. Verma was talking some very beautiful solutions. And unless government brings in such expertise into their daily practice and then operate the transport system, right? Unless it becomes people's movement, it won't be possible. And the moment you say something, the next day, people will come to NGT. They will tell this is leading to that pollution. So give us a stay. You give stay. Somebody else comes and says, no, you should not have stated because this is the real problem and not that. So unless, as I forget the second speaker's name, and unless all the authorities, who are concerned with this and agencies that deal with this come together and act, we are not going to achieve anything. And I'll give you one example. In Korea, vice chancellor of a university, there they call them presidents of the university. He is not given a car. He has to travel by public transport, by train. But here, that has to change. Because everybody asks, can you give me a car? Can you give me this? Can you give me that? Leo may say, sir, you are also going in car with a red light on top. But then, I'm not pinpointing this man, that man, or that. In general, if we are able to get that system, say, for example, Leo, you have seen Chennai. Madhya Kailash, where you enter to go to ACJ. That road. There is a proposal now to have a multi-story car parking, and all IT companies which are situated about 15 kilometers from that point, they should park the car there, and only local train will be operated from there to. I mean, there is a proposal, and then it's going to be funded by World Bank. And we should try such things. I mean, unless we try and unless we educate ourselves, not educate people, educate ourselves. I'm the first student to get educated. No, we can't do anything about this. As I said, all of us know the problem. But the solution, we should come with some out of the box solution. Out of the box solution. And then this work from home, for example, it has really, helped reduce the air pollution in major cities. And the traffic department in Anna University, they have done a work or some project, and they have shown that in some sectors, work from home should become the norm, even after COVID times, if there is going to be one like that. Okay. And that means that many vehicles don't come. But then you have to do, as someone was talking about, the life cycle analysis. It is not always, easy to say on the screen you see, and then you get the carbon footprint left by electronics industry and then usage of electronic gadgets is much more than burning coal in the road. I suppose you agree with me here. So you have to factor in all these things, and then as an experiment in different pockets in the country, we should see different options, whichever works for that particular thing, we should go ahead and do it. Otherwise, I'm really impressed with all the presentation, and you are an expert in bringing in nice people with a lot of commitment to talk. I really appreciate you, and I've been doing it for the last 25 years, maybe more. Yeah.
Thank you for that intervention. I just want to say that, yes, sometimes we also have to work not just across departments of a city, which manages or overlooks a city, but we also need a network among cities, which we simply don't seem to care about.
Yes.
But, one of the significant points here is our bureaucrats typically like to network with foreign cities, but not cities within India. So I think that is one of the major problems we have, where solutions that in Bangalore has worked out or Chennai has worked out are not translated into action in each of the cities. So this cross learning is not taking place. I also noticed that there is Usha Rao. Usha, if you are there, if you can comment. Usha recently finished her PhD from IIT Delhi on transportation studies. In case you want to make a comment, you're welcome to. I see that Mr. Paritosh Tyagi has left. So, Usha, are you going to? Yeah.
Sorry, I think you're mistaken. I'm not that Usha.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Fair enough. If you'd like to say something.
I don't know how much of what.
Yeah, your voice is breaking. If you don't have a good signal, try and find a good signal and join us. Otherwise, we are not able to hear you. Yeah. So, Ashwin, you want to take over?
Yeah. So I noticed that there are a few questions in the chat box for some of our speakers. So this question is from Professor Ashish Verma. So Rajashekar is asking, can you please suggest what are the effective actions that should be implemented to reduce air pollution? So some solutions, Professor.
Yeah, hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what actually we were trying to, I was trying to present in my work. It has to be a combination of, steps, not just focus on technology, too much of focus on just the vehicle technology, clean fuel, etc. may solve some bit of problem, but also not completely. But may not solve other problems. You can tomorrow, just do a magic and electrify a whole fleet in the city, but the problem of traffic, the core problem of traffic congestion and travel time delays would still remain. At the same time, again, the life cycle, emissions of electricity is also a concern. So while that being still a strategy to look for, but too much of focus, you also need to look at planning and policy interventions. There's a lot of discussion happened on buses and bus priority. I think we have been making this point, and in some of my meetings with the officials, I've really said any road which has, 2 lanes for each direction should reserve 1 lane for buses. You only need 1 lane to travel for, for any other vehicle to move. So any road which has 2 lanes, you should try reserving 1 lane for buses. That's how we should really look at the bus priority. And of course, bus priority is much more beyond giving the space on road and at the junctions, priority and so on. There are several other ways in which through policies you can bring in bus priority, which also should be looked at. For example, incentivizing the miles traveled on buses or miles traveled on, cycle or walk. Just like credit card points and, frequent flyer, points and so on. Why don't you incentivize people? That's again a set of things that you need to do. And then at the planning level, increasing the net coverage and also the quality of the infrastructure for these modes. All these things need to happen parallelly. At the same time, how you organize the different land uses in the city? Can we move towards a situation where people can live closer to where they work and education? That kind of situation would be ideal for a largely walkable city or a largely cyclable city, rather than a requirement of heavy capacity public transport system. Cities can actually completely avoid having metro rail systems, these high capacity systems, but that would require a very strong land use policy, land use and transport integrated policy control. That's what I would say, hopefully.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So Girish Prakash has a question. He asks, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of BBMP installing smog towers in Bangalore? Vinay, would you like to take that?
Sure, can I jump in?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I saw the comment.
Yeah.
See, smog towers, it's new to India, whereas both China and Netherlands, they already have it. If those smog towers are working fine, the Netherlands, it's not much of a pollution. China has a lot of pollution, as we know. If those smog towers are working very well, you can learn from them. There's nothing wrong. If it works in China, it should work here also. So you can try a prototype. BBMP, I'm having kind of I'm looking for a politically correct word, but maybe another agency can take over this issue and have a pilot. And if it works, great, we can expand.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kashyap. I've noticed a question from Dasarathi in the chat box. He asks, can we implement a sustainable transport cess on private vehicles to discourage private automobiles and fund infrastructure for buses, walking and cycling? Vinay, would you like to address this question?
Yeah, I mean, whatever Das is saying is, sorry, that's my glasses broke when Leo called me urgently to join the call. I stepped on it. We definitely need to have a.
I will pay 10% for those glasses. I will only want 10% of the font.
No, the question is in this lockdown where to find a glasses repair person. But
if it power matches mine, then I'll give you mine.
Yeah. So the point is we need to have urban transport cess, and we need to be asking why this cess is not charged on private vehicles. See, when you start looking at it from a perspective of climate justice, you'll see that when cars are occupying more space, they need to be at least some kind of a reparation, right? And that kind of reparation would involve that they pay more taxes, that they pay more road tax, motor vehicle tax. This can be used to fund the buses, right? But that is not even being done. When you ask the government, why aren't you buying buses? They're saying that they don't have the money. This time, they're going to take 1,500 buses on lease under a gross cost contract model, where the driver and the bus will come on lease from a private company. And they're saying that this will reduce cost. How are the costs reduced? The costs reduced because the private companies pay much less to the drivers than BMTC will pay. This is the only way they're able to think of reducing cost. Instead, if you see Bangalore, right, even street vendors are forced to pay hafta, mamul, etc. to the police, whereas a person who owns a SUV does not even pay 50 paisa as parking fees for parking on the road and occupying space which is the commons. Streets belong to everybody. There is no preferential, it's not, why should the rich have like some kind of preferential access to streets, right? Why are you allowed? If you are going to occupy that space, you might as well very well pay for it so that it takes care of some other aspects. So to answer the question in short, it has to be done. The question is, why is it not done? It's not done because we are not demanding for it. If we have more number of people demanding this kind of a cess, and that this being used later on to support the bus system, it will happen. We should all be asking for this cess from our elected representatives, from our corporators, from our MLAs, from our MPs.
Okay. Vinay has also mentioned that Shamala is in the audience and she's a woman cyclist. So Shamala, would you like to share something of your experience cycling across Bangalore and your reflections on this discussion?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Vinay. You kind of put me in the spot, but yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I've been cycling for over 15 years now, and it's been.
Don't mind, can you turn your camera on so we can see you?
Should I? I think I'll pass on that. Yeah. So yeah, I've been cycling for over 15 years, and I think my biggest grouch is really with the metro and why we are even putting in so much money into the metro and not focusing on something on simpler solutions like, bicycling infrastructure or walking pedestrian infrastructure. There's so much that needs to be done on that front. And also the fact that metro is not even accessible to all, when we're talking about equity, justice, it's not even accessible to most people. Forget about, of course, it's expensive. And secondly, I don't think we can ever pass a vegetable basket or a flower basket through the scanner in a metro station and have poor people access or ride a metro. So why do we have metro in the first place? So I don't know. There are so many infrastructures that's not, forget about ecological concerns. We're not even addressing social issues and social justice and equity out here. So it's quite disheartening that way. Yeah, and of course, I'm glad that Vinay also brought up the garbage problem, waste management problem that the city is faced with. We are right now running a course on waste supply chain management for a bunch of students. And we went to see a landfill site, which of course is still operational. And it was heartbreaking to see the amount of methane emissions coming out of the landfill. And it's not even being monitored. It's not, nobody is looking at it. It's not, no regulations, nothing. They're just stuck huge black pipes. So methane just comes out of the landfill dumps, and the entire place is literally bubbling with methane. And this is what we are, doing as a city. So these are some of the things that, I would like to share. And if there are officials here who are looking into air pollution and noise pollution, these are some things that we should really look at, like how landfills are affecting, why are we investing in these big, huge, projects when there are simpler solutions. And we've been talking about these simpler solutions for ages now. I'm sure ESG and Bus Prayanikara Vedike have been doing it for 10 years, have put these solutions on the table for so long. So it's kind of, surprising that we haven't made much.
So Shamala, I hear you there, and I just want to fill you in with what's the structural problem here. And I think that also helps us look at solutions. One of the structural problems that we have identified is the fact that there is no coordination between agencies. That's also got to do with how the entire civil services network is set up. Suppose I call, this happened in this series itself. I called a technical person because Ms. Shika was, who runs the BMTC, could not come because of COVID duties. But when the technical person came, agreed to, the minute she saw that the other panelists were senior IAS officers, she backed out. I said, look, we want you to converse with you. See, this type of very highly stratified system cannot move a city. And the responsibility lies largely on the seniors to make the junior level workers comfortable talking across power barriers. And this is one of the power barriers. I mean, you can go into BMTC internal department and they'll all agree with all these ideas. But something happens in the upper echelons of power. And I think this is therefore a deeply political matter. So environmental justice doesn't, I mean, transportation justice, environmental justice, street justice are all deeply political matters. And to see it merely from a technical perspective will not give us the answers. So in that sense, what Vinay says is really a frontal issue. But it is also important to try and create a network where it doesn't become a government-driven system alone. As consumers, we have power. As consumers, we are not effectively networked. There are lots of networks, but they are not effectively networked to kind of propel the transformation that is essential. Like what Ashish says, there are a lot of brilliant ideas on the table. It's not like these ideas were not there. I mean, I started working in this from 1991 when there was something called a Committee for Clean Bangalore. Several senior engineers, all of them were part of it, and I was in that. And many of the ideas we now talk were already being spoken of then. We had challenged the ELRTS, as it was called, Vijay Mallya's dream scheme for Bangalore. Thankfully, it didn't take off. Otherwise, it would have gone the Kingfisher way. The idea was to actually take elevated light rail transit systems through rich neighborhoods and forget the congested neighborhoods. The point is that when we have a system which thinks only based on responding to middle class concerns, how do you prepare the city 50 years down the line for the kind of demands that Ashish has shown in his presentation? And I want to say also that it is a deep worry that even the way in which the pandemic is being responded to, there is hardly any consideration to the working class, the poor, and the poorer neighborhoods.
Yeah.
All the text which is written by BBMP and police is written for the English-speaking middle and upper classes, as if we are the only ones whose lives matter. You see, so I think this structural problem is something that everyone has to address across the board all the time, and then bring in our particular discipline and say, look, let's now move forward.
Leo, I have a point, Leo.
Yeah.
See, you were talking about network not when driven by others, the public and others. But my point is to make the whole thing effective and implementable, we should do something to see that intergovernment networking takes off.
No, I agree with that. I am saying
Yes.
that intergovernment networking with public pressure has to operate all the time, and making sure that it is inclusive in a way that all class interests, all working classes, all community interests are taken care of, and not as we now see it, where you can pay, you live. If you can't pay, you die.
For example, every IAS officer, every police officer, and every traffic department official should be given some work as to how he participates in this network, and it should be a part of his job. It should be entered in the service register. Then he will do it.
Yes.
So we need to bring in there. I mean, whether I work or not, if I get on 31st or 30th every month my salary check, then I won't do anything. So this kind of accountability, if it is injected into the system, and this injecting can be done by private organizations and NGOs like you. But once if it has to be implemented, if government network is there, it will see the light of the day.
Sure.
That is my.
Yeah, true. But also it's what we are doing right now, or the government is very smartly dodging most of the things by privatizing, a lot of these. For example, even BMRCL, I feel, is like a corporation. There is no access to, it's very hard to reach a BMRCL official and talk to them about issues and concerns. It's no more like walking to the office. And So we are getting into that mode, which is also something that one should address and take note of. Like even BBMP now is wanting to become SWM, solid waste management is now wanting to become an autonomous, like a private thing of their own. I don't know how far that's going to be useful or not, but yeah, these are the.
Ashwin, you should.
So thank you, Shamala, for sharing with us, and also Dr. Nagendran and Leo for your messages. With that, I think we can wind up with today's session. We're already a bit over time, and I think it was a really rich discussion. We heard many, many voices and perspectives, mostly saying the same thing, but also with some interesting contradictions. So hopefully we can all work together on the solutions proposed to move Bangalore forward in a way which is centered around justice and equity. Before I wrap up the session, I would also like to remind you that our next session will be on 10th May 2021, Monday between 6 to 7:30 p.m. Following up on today's topic, the next session will be on reimagining Bangalore's infrastructure as resilient to climate change. We'll try to understand if turning planning and development into deeply democratic and decentralized processes could be the answer to reducing the carbon footprint of the metropolis. Next week's session will also be the last sectoral discussion, and we will wrap up the series on the 17th of May with our final session. I request everybody here to join in for next week's session as well. And also recordings and reports of this session and our previous sessions will be accessible on our website, www.esgindia.org. With this, I'd like to thank all of our speakers for participating in this discussion. I'm also grateful to our participants who registered and who stayed back for so long. The entire team at ESG and our interns who have been doing so much in the background. And yeah, I wish you all a very good night. Thank you.
Thanks. Leo, is there a plan after the series is over to come up with some kind of synthesis report or something based on all this series of webinars that you're doing?
Yeah, so the way we approached it is because we saw that the BBMP commissioner had committed to meet the Paris climate targets, but we did not find enough material. So we knew that there was a promissory note without actually doing due diligence. So we said, well, let's do the due diligence this way. And in a way, we said, it's also helping the government imagine that it is possible, despite all these troubling times, to organize such conversations sectorally, because they never do that. And they should do it as part of the regular work. It's as if they are not accountable right from the Prime Minister down to the corporator and the local official. So the idea is, if you can actually converse, we would have loved to have this as a town hall meeting. Obviously, it's not possible. So we did the next best thing. And we have been grateful that many, many senior representatives of the government made time for this. From the police, from the BBMP, from the state administration, pollution control board, forest department, across the board we have had biodiversity board, we have had representation. And the idea is that you cannot solve these complex problems by saying, okay, now I heard you, now let me go and fix the problem. That has to end. That attitude has to end. They are accountable to us all the time. That when we discuss and in a discursive platform, have some solutions thrown up, problems identified, complexities which are not sorted out, we understand it is a complex issue, then their working has also got to be transparent to us, which today is not happening. So we end up before the NGT or the High Court in litigative. But one good thing is that the High Courts have actually stepped in the High Court, even in the NGT it happens, has stepped up and said, why don't we see it as non-adversarial? In many, like the waste management, the lakes and infrastructure cases, we have worked in non-adversarial ways, though we are opposite sides, and come up with solutions which the court then argues for and blesses it with direction. And then that is one way forward. But what is really the best way to do it is to democratize it and make sure our corporations, our legislative councils become accountable and transparent in a deeply democratic way. So yes, there will be a report as a draft, which we'll put out as soon as the 9th session is over, the next week session, and that will be placed in public domain for anybody to comment. We have already done reports of all the sessions. This session's report will come out tomorrow or day after. And half the team has been sick with COVID. One of my colleagues lost her mother and her sister this morning. And yet, I don't know where my wonderful team has the energy to come. And so we felt that if we can't focus on this, we're just going to desiccate. So yes, it's difficult times for all of us. Our trustee is very sick. We hope he'll come out of hospital tomorrow. So wishes all good luck. We will produce the report by tomorrow or day after. And next week we'll be back on the next theme. And after that, we'll produce that draft report. And the idea is in the final one, we want to invite one or two interveners to bring in the whole dense conversations that are there. And all the presenters who made presentations will also be invited. So we have more like hopefully it works. It's you can see internet is not an helpful thing.
Yes. Leo, you must bring your CM and FM on that day.
I don't know if our CM can spare time after he did not find the necessary oxygen for 25 people who were killed. 25 people in one hospital. I mean, we are really seeing murders here.
I know. It is.
I mean, it's not just the election commission which it's every state administration and district. So I know there are good officers, but I wish we had more whistleblowers because those 25 people should have lived. I don't even know if there is oxygen in the oxygen cylinders. Believe me, people are getting 20 liters of oxygen and just not getting the saturation levels up. So what are they filling in those tanks? So we are in real trouble, and I hope that we all look out for each other. And this is a big lesson for not decentralizing, big lesson for letting the government get off with whatever they did. I think the elections have taught a big lesson. Anti-incumbency is a good thing. And I guess it's also accountability and transparency. So this is about that.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll not put our cities on ventilator and oxygen cylinder.
Oh, please.
That's.
Yeah. Well, I did see that they were putting domes in Darjeeling. There was a tender issued by West Bengal government for domes to keep those who have died of COVID in Darjeeling because they don't have space. And we are fighting an issue with Commissioner. Commissioner actually was administrator when he inaugurated the series. He's now the Commissioner Gaurav Gupta. And we work with him, but we also would like to disagree with him.
Yeah.
Has created space for cremation in a landfill. And people who are there are resisting because it's against judicial orders and also against all laws. What is funny is that he's using the Disaster Management Act and Epidemic, 1897 law to terrorize people who are saying the right thing. Landfill is not a place to cremate the dead, period. I mean, we have not become so bad that we have to cremate the dead in such an unsacred space. I mean, let it be at least some amount of dignity that people have, when they die. So we are hoping they'll change their mind. We are living through very, very bad times.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Leo.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks, Leo. Thanks, CSG team.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, everyone. It's wonderful.
Thank you, everybody.
We should keep working on this together. Thank you so much.